We've lost it. There we go. Good morning. Thank you all for coming. We've got a room full today, which is very pleasing to see. So thank you for your time. Welcome to the ABL Maritime Market Briefing for January 2024, obviously the first of 2024. And as per our tradition, Paul Hill will be talking about what's been going on in 2023 and looking into his crystal ball to what's going to happen in 2024, or at least what we think is going to happen. My name is Mark McGowan. I'm the Global Managing Director for Maritime here at ABL. Our briefing today is accredited by the Chartered Insurance Institute, and delegates can claim up to 1 CPD hour for your participation. We will therefore keep a record of those of you in the room today and those of you logging on online. So if you haven't done so already, please make sure you sign in with our team on the desk outside after the briefing so we can make sure these records are accurate. So I'm delighted to announce our presenters for today. Paul Hill, who many of you know for his work with the Ocean Hull Committee, is our Global Technical Director for Maritime, and he's based here in London. He'll be giving the technical part of the presentation. And that will be followed by our monthly case reports, which, although it's January, I don't think gives us a complete overview of 2023 yet. Hopefully we'll have that next month. And Tom will be giving that. Tom's a naval architect with one of our ABL group companies, Longitude, and he's based here in our London office as well. All of the information contained in these presentations is the opinion of the presenters and not necessarily that of ABL. So the usual caveats apply, Chatham House rules apply as per usual. As I mentioned before, these are CPD accredited, so your feedback is very useful for us to keep this accreditation status and to allow us to tailor our presentations and the briefings to what you guys want, which is important to us. There's a QR code here and it's outside, and we'll be following up with emails as well. But if you do have a bit of time, perhaps you could fill this out for us because it helps us keep things on track. Another brief mention before I hand over to Paul about the Neptune Declaration on Seafarer Wellbeing and Crew Change. As many of you know, a lot of our colleagues at ABL come from seafaring backgrounds, myself included and Paul included, who's speaking today. And as such, we're very proud to be a signatory of the Neptune Declaration, which has undoubtedly played a part in recent years in the improvement of the lives of seafarers. Please take a moment, if you can, to look at this and perhaps consider getting your own company to become a signatory, if that's at all possible. With that, I'm going to hand over to Paul.
Thank you, Mark, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for turning up. Glad the tube strikes and the train strikes didn't affect it today. That's very good. We did think it was going to be quite quiet. But welcome to the market briefing, the shipping review of 2023 and what to expect in 2024. And as usual, I quote the learning objectives. You should be able to, after this presentation, understand the major shipping events of 2023, able to explain the challenges that faced shipping, able to talk a bit about the outlook of 2024, and able to explain the risks that underwriters face. Now, if you can do all that, then that's great. But, let's move on. So looking back at 2023, a busy year. When I started writing this presentation back in November, I was collecting information. It was a bit sparse, but it's developed considerably since then, especially over the latter part of 2023. So we're into the second year of the Russian-Ukraine war. I'll talk about that, how it affects shipping. And of course, Hamas attacked Israel, and that's had a big effect with the Houthis attacking shipping in the Red Sea on the back of that. There's some tension between China and the US. I'm not going to go into that one. That's another topic. And of course, we've also got some tensions with North Korea, Russia, and Iran at the moment. Those sort of things may develop this year. Let's see. But we're not talking about politics. We're talking about shipping. So keep focused on the shipping side of things. Second year of the Russian-Ukraine war, unfortunately. We were rather hoping it was all going to be over by now, but it's not. There is an end isn't in sight at the moment. But important to us in the shipping world, the Black Sea Grain Initiative, which was providing a safe passage for bulk carriers and general cargo ships out of Ukraine to ferry grain around the world. Unfortunately, that expired in July 2023, and the Russians didn't renew it. So at that time, the Russians announced that shipping has now become a legitimate target in the war. And we'll talk about merchant shipping. So a new route developed anyway. The new route from Ukraine to the European, to the world, basically hugs the coast of Romania and Bulgaria and keeps it inside their territorial waters. It's a solution. So there is still grain flowing out, but it's not the way it was before. And of course, sanctions continue to affect Russia, but unusually the economy is growing. I listened to a podcast about that yesterday because I couldn't understand how that could be so. But the explanation in wartime, the warring nation generally does have a larger economy due to manufacturing of weapons, etc., etc. So also the rise of the dark fleet. The dark fleet's always been there, but it's a bit more prolific at the moment, and I'm going to explain about that in detail in the forthcoming slides. So the cargo ships now are a legitimate target, as I mentioned before, and this is a slide showing you the old route from Ukrainian ports through the Bosphorus Strait and out into Europe. It's a straight line. Unfortunately, now that's a no-go area because you're actually in Russian-controlled waters. So therefore, the Russians have got the right to attack you, or so they say. So now the route is down the coast, hugging the coast. Again, that's all very well, but as we know, in terms of shipping risks, hugging the coast isn't quite as safe as going in a straight line down the middle. So grain shipments are being greatly reduced. How that's going to develop over this year, I don't know. That's all that will develop. And Russia has been attacking grain storage and a limited number of ships in Ukrainian ports. So we still have problems. The dark fleet, rise of the dark fleet. Now, there's pretty substantial statistics here, whether to be believed or not, but it's the general consensus from some, the professionals on the internet. Basically, the dark fleet are a fleet of tankers and other ships that are involved in sanction evasion with Russia, basically taking Russian fuel out of Russia against the international sanctions and dispersing it around the world. Now, there's figures showing as much as 10% of the world tanker fleet are part of this dark fleet now, and 20% if you include the grey fleet, which is the semi-legitimate fleet. So it's a lot of money is driving this business. What does it mean to underwriters and to us in the shipping world? Well, older ships are being saved from scrapping. So older tankers, crude carriers, etc., that were on their way to being scrapped, are now fetching good money on the charter market in the dark fleet. And what do old tankers have, in common? Well, they're generally in poorer condition. They're more prone to casualties, machinery failure, and of course, maintenance deteriorates at the end of a ship's life, particularly if it was planning to be scrapped. So there's a risk there, and they're operating on Paris MOU blacklisted flags of convenience. So there's no flag state control. So there's no inspections being carried out by flag state in port to identify problems that exist. In fact, these ships aren't coming to those ports. So there's there are vessels out there that haven't had an inspection for maybe 10 years that form part of this dark fleet, unclassified and hence uninsured. So it's a big problem. Ship-to-ship transfers are occurring. That's part of the dark fleet's modus operandi, and whenever there's a ship-to-ship transfer, there's a pollution risk, especially if it's an older ship and less, less maintained, etc. Just to note there, in May 2023, an uninsured tanker exploded in Southeast Asia, killing crew. So there are incidents happening. Because it's the dark fleet, we're not seeing the full extent of it. AIS is being turned off. We're not getting all that news. So looking back at 2023, the end of 2023, Hamas attacked Israel. We all know about that. And on the back of that, the Houthis, in support of Hamas and Palestine, are attacking shipping in the Red Sea. Now, this is obviously a very serious situation for the merchant seamen, the merchant fleet, and of course the merchant seamen in particular. As an ex-merchant seaman, I can't think of anything worse than being told by your company that you're transiting the Suez Canal on any ship at this time of year because you're a potential target, and not target for machine gun fire from piracy or the odd grenade, but we're talking about rockets and drones now. So it's a very scary business, and and I do feel for them. But as a consequence, the big companies, Maersk, MSC, Hapag-Lloyd, all the big container ship companies are taking the longer route around Cape Horn. And this shows you the difference here. Shipping companies rerouting. Cape Horn, sorry. Cape of Good Hope in South Africa. I knew I'd get that one wrong. So anyway, this is a map showing you what's happening here, because I asked my daughter about this, what she knew, and she couldn't understand what I was talking about. Or why, I don't know, maybe because she doesn't look at maps very often. But this shows you that the normal shipping routes from east to west, west to east, through the Suez Canal is that red dotted line, and it's almost a straight line, bit of a wiggly one. But now routing south via the Cape of Good Hope is an increase of an extra 12 days for a vessel that's doing 16 knots. So that's your average container ship. If you're a tanker and you're being rerouted and you're only doing 10 knots or 12 knots, then you're talking about an extra 3 weeks, possibly 4 weeks. So it's a lot more time, a lot more fuel, and again, when it comes to risks to underwriters, more chance of there being a failure along the way. And I've mentioned that there's limited bunker and repair ports along the way on that coast of Africa. And that's particularly poignant. Until you get down to South Africa, there isn't much in way of ports, safe ports to call into. And if we're talking about a lot of traffic, and we are talking about a lot of traffic being diverted that way, then there's going to be some demand on repair ports in South Africa. And really, knowing South Africa, we have an office down there, they're not ready for it. So it could be an unraveling serious situation. It's only going to take 1 or 2 big casualties down there, and the capacity has been reached. So and then of course we've got the long leg up to Europe. I forgot to mention that the Cape of Good Hope also has some quite serious weather. So at this time of year, up until February, March, until spring, we've got some quite severe weather conditions down there. That could cause problems, particularly to the big fully laden container ships. It's going to be potentially going to be some containers lost. It's where the two currents meet each other, and big waves are formed. So it's something to keep an eye on. How long is this going to go for? We don't know, but I don't think it's going to be resolved quickly. And the consensus is really that we're set to be in this situation for a few months yet. So, hottest year on record. That's what we hear in the news, and we've seen in the news. We've seen global temperatures shattering records everywhere in the UK and all around the world. We have wildfires, earthquakes, floods, and it's killed thousands. I've got notes in front of me giving you the numbers of the top 10 events. I'm not going to repeat them because we haven't got time. But it's been a pretty unusual, hot year for us. How's it affect shipping? Well, one of the main things is severe drought in the Panama Canal, which I'm going to explain a bit more about. I found that quite intriguing. And record levels of water in the Mississippi River, big river, very important in the southern states. It's a river that's a lot of cargo is transferred on. It's drying up. What happens in those cases? And extreme weather, of course, it causes extreme winds, and that's always a threat to shipping. Heavy weather damage will increase. So looking back at this Panama Canal situation, I always thought, well, I learned this several years ago, but initially I thought there must be two levels in the two seas, the Pacific Ocean and Atlantic Ocean, to make the Panama Canal work. You've got to have a different level to be able to go through locks and get to the other side. But actually, sea level's the same around the world, the same as the world's flat, round. Sorry. So, you know, it's how does it work? So it works by pumping water from the lakes, the Gatun lakes, into the locks to take ships in. So it's reliant on a big mass of water in central Panama, and of course, due to the weather conditions, it's been drying out. And this has been causing lower transit frequencies. So where there's been 36 transits a day, on average, it's been reduced to 22. And when you reduce things, demand goes up and the cost goes up. So there's been a big, a big impact on shipping. And there's been a lot of ships that won't pay the increased fees to go through, or are not prepared to sit in the queue waiting for a slot, and have decided to go around Cape Horn this time, which, like the Cape of Good Hope, is a long way around and fraught with severe weather conditions, possibly more at the Cape Horn than Cape Hope. So it's had a big effect. It was getting better, but apparently the latest news is still a problem. But of course, when rains start to happen again in February and March in that area, hopefully it all should sort of sort itself out. But it's a good indication of how global warming and weather conditions can affect global trade. So we've got it happening in the Panama Canal, we've got the Suez Canal. You know, how worse can it get? So looking at something positive, we all know about the alternative fuels that are coming our way. I'm not going to go into that in detail. Just want to mention the Laura Maersk, which was launched last year. It's the world's first container ship that's powered by methanol fueled engine. Now, when I read this, I think, okay, so it's powered by methanol fuel. That's great. Now, methanol is a alternative fuel. It's not a totally green fuel. It's still got carbon atoms in its makeup, but it's a good transition. And it's good to see, you know, a big company like Maersk going this way. Although it says it's powered by methanol fuel, it's not. It's able to be powered by a methanol fuel, which means it's still running on conventional fuel, heavy fuel oil, till such a time when there's enough methanol around the world at the right price for it to be used. So it's a bit of a, careful what I say here when I'm mentioning greenwashing, you know, a company the size of Maersk, but, you know, it is a little bit, it depends on how you get this story across. But it's positive because it means that there is an alternative, and it's proven and it's been launched. You can actually run a ship on methanol, and that's a great advance. So I'm looking back at 2023 now, looking at the time, and I'm aware that I've got quite a few to go through. Looking at the casualty statistics, total losses, and this is from Allianz's safety report that comes out every year at about October. And generally, what we're looking at is shipping losses hitting a record low, but there's a jump in fire casualties. So 30 years ago, shipping losses were 200 plus a year. That was a very, very big number. 38 losses during 2022. Of course, there's a year missing from these statistics, compared with 59 in 2021. So we don't know really what 2023 brings yet until the middle, until all the statistics have been collated. But definite drop. So annual shipping losses down 65% over the past decade. Good for the shipping industry, good for insurance, but or is it? And we do need a balance, obviously, to make money. Fires accounted for 18% of the value of marine claims analysed, compared with 13% for a 5-year period. So fires are still a risk, and that's cargo fires, and that's machinery fires. We're not really getting anywhere with fire prevention. It's still going up. So I'm going to mention the top 5 ABL cases, because the figures are quite significant this year. They've been mentioned in previous market briefings, and I'm not going to go into the full detail of all of them. I'm just going to show you a quick snapshot. So in 5th position, with a $5.5 million loss, we have a 10-year-old Panamax boat carrier, which had a tail shaft fracture when on a laden voyage. So thankfully, there was some flooding, it was limited, and it was all under control. So the next one, number 4, as I said, I'm going to be brief, because there's lots of more new slides coming in this presentation. Number 4, we had a piracy case with losses in the order of 6.5 million, 6.65 million. And it was just a smaller tanker operating bunkering as a bunkering ship for fishing vessels on the west coast of Africa. She arrived at the rendezvous point of one of the vessels and was drifting with engines stopped, awaiting its arrival. At 2 o'clock one afternoon, the duty officer observed pirates approaching from the starboard quarter. At number 3, we have coating damages to a very expensive 2-year-old super yacht, and that was in dry dock for her first class intermediate survey. When, and there's several slides on this one, when some overspray from work on a crane that was being painted nearby, overspray adhered to the coatings on our super yacht. Not ours, but theirs, the one we were involved with, and also another super yacht there. But the one we were involved with had speckles of paint on her perfect, white hull. It doesn't sound so bad, doesn't sound so serious, but this is a massive claim. It's still being evaluated, and we're currently working on it now, but we're in excess of $8-9 million at the moment to repair this, because it means sanding back all the paint and recoating, and that's a major cost for a super yacht. So at number 2 here, we've got an elision, which was another big claim with a container ship and a tanker. And this happened in a Mediterranean port. And it's some charts here showing you what happened. The moorings broke on the container ship, and it started to drift across the harbor, coming into contact with the tanker that was on the other berth on the other side, and coming to rest using the tanker there as a fender. And that's going to be a big cost. The estimate is left high there because we haven't got the full costs yet. The bulk of the heavy costs were estimated to be actually in the reconstruction of the oil terminal that the tanker was berthed next to. We had a fire here. This was number one, and this is a suction dredger. Now, you may think a suction dredger is not going to be that high in costs. It just sucks up a bit of mud and moves it somewhere else. It's not a very sophisticated piece of machinery, but that's where you're wrong. It is a very sophisticated piece of machinery, and because it's sophisticated, it does an unusual job. When you get these big dredgers, they're very expensive, and the parts are very expensive. And the parts that were damaged here in the fire make up a huge sum, and we're estimating around 22 million for this loss, which is quite substantial. I know I'm coming close to my half time at the moment, so I'm going to flick through this dredger and go to outlooks for 2024. As always, I can't look into my crystal ball. We don't really know what's going on, but we do know that the year is going to start with what we started with in the end of 2023. We've got the obvious risks associated with the Suez Canal problems at the moment. And as a consequence of this rerouting of container ships around Cape Horn, we're going to see box rates, and that's the rates that they charge for a TEU on a container ship, are going to go up to, say, $2,000. I've seen $5,000 mentioned as well. Tanker rates are going to increase accordingly. That's going to put up fuel prices. It's definitely going to increase door-to-door delivery of cargo, increase time. So your goods that are coming from China, coming from the Far East, coming from anywhere over in the East are going to be more expensive. It's going to fuel inflation. As we're recovering from inflation, this could potentially fuel it more. It's definitely going to hit you in your pocket when you do your Amazon shop. Those goods are going to be a bit more expensive, and they're going to take longer to get here. So beware of that one. So for shipping insurance is going to mean the cost of spare parts we require to amend casualties. They're going to be increased. Longer delivery times, of course, for components, unless they're air freighted. And of course, we've got this heightened heavy weather damage due to more treacherous routing. So I'm talking about this longer route around Cape Horn, Cape of Good Hope, and Cape Horn. So less repair facilities on the way, and I've mentioned that already, and importantly, less salvage capacity along that route. So if there is a big incident, they've got salvage capacity in Walvis Bay and Cape Town, but it's not as good as the Mediterranean. So that's an issue. Now the boring bit, regulations. Now there's a lot of amended regulations, and there are every year. There's some interesting ones this year, so I'm going to skip through the many. I mean, I could bore you with lots of amendments, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to concentrate on this one IGF code amendment, which ties into us and fires on ships, because it involves amendments to the safety construction of systems for low flashpoint fuels. So that's your gas oils and your low sulfur fuels that are being used on ships, as well as gas, LNG. There's a lot of new regulations come into force this year as of it says 1st of January 2023. That means 24. There's a number of new regulations involving double-skinned fuel pipes in enclosed areas where they weren't before, and more detection, more requirements for A60 fire retarded spaces, retarding insulation rather, and more alarms and more sort of warnings of potential fire and ignition sources in the machinery space. Just to mention what's coming up, or what has come up from the 1st of January, the EU emissions trading system. And this is obviously to do with decarbonisation of shipping. From the 1st of January, ship operators will need to purchase carbon credits on the EU emissions trading system now, when the ship calls in to at least one EU port. And to start with, operators will need to buy credits reflecting 40% of the ship's emissions on the voyage. So, but this will be a percentage will increase year on year until 2027, when operators in some cases need to buy credits reflecting 100% of the ship's emissions on the voyage. And operators will have to monitor and report on their ship's emissions. And that's the important thing. And that's mentioned also in the next slide when it comes to CII, or the slide after this one. But IMO MEPC 80 this year has actually changed the targets that were announced for decarbonisation. They're much more stringent now, and they've actually increased or decreased the time limits, the targets, where we're going to achieve lower emissions. So without going into detail there, it's a good thing for the climate. It's another challenge for shipping on what was already a challenge this time last year. It's now even more of a challenge, but things are moving, as I said, with the Maersk in methanol. Things are moving in the right direction, albeit fairly slowly and cautiously at the moment. So going back to CII and the carbon intensity rating system that I mentioned last year, and now this is where the ship owner has to monitor its carbon emissions and report them into a central database. And this, the deadline for reporting, the first report is in March this year. So there's going to be a lot of people running around in shipping departments now, totting up their emissions and producing this report in order to gain a statement of compliance from class or flag states, which is based on the CII data. Not strictly going to affect the insurance industry, but it's a sign that we are moving along with these decarbonisation initiatives. Just going to mention the crewing crisis, because I had this slide last year, but on researching what's happening this year, I bumped into some pretty astonishing figures. And there's an estimate from one learned body that we're going to be short of 56,000 trained ships officers by 2026. And that's a big number. And why? This isn't to mention the new skills that we're going to be required for new fuels and new technologies coming through. This is just your traditionally educated officers like myself and like Mark here. Why? Because nobody wants to go to sea anymore, and I don't blame them. Do you? I mean, you've got to go through the Red Sea, the threat of losing your life there. You've got threats from piracy in various areas of the world. You've got high threats of litigation if you cause an oil spill or you're involved in sanction busting, etc. The ship's officers are the ones that take the brunt of all this. Who would want to do that? Who put them in that position? On top of the fact that you're out of touch with your families for a long time, made worse now actually by the fact that you're connected to them virtually. You can actually see what they're doing now rather than just shutting off. Like when I went to sea, we just shut off for 6 months and pretended they weren't there. It's the only way to survive. Now you've got videos of them going to the beach and waving at daddy. It must be horrendous. So on top of that, there's appreciation. They weren't recognized as key workers during the pandemic, even though they were. And then we've got salaries, which aren't as good as you think they are. So all adds up to a crewing crisis, and what's going to happen here? Obviously, crews, educated crews, and experienced crews are very important to reducing problems at sea. We all know that. So this is going to be a crisis for insurance as well. So what's the solution? Just get rid of all those people and get autonomous ships and move that on faster, and crew them with AI. And that's what's been talked about over the last few years. And really this year, AI has really come to the forefront with Chat GPT. I've even looked at that. And, we're now talking AI, and it's now autonomous ships with AI is becoming increasingly feasible. And I think that will move rapidly. And in conjunction with the lack of crews and, how are we going to get those crews? This probably will be the real alternative. So moving very quickly now, I'm stealing Tom's time here. He's saying, don't worry about it. China technology, and I had a couple of slides here saying China's electric car production this year is expected to exceed Tesla's share of the market. Things are moving quickly in China, and last year, just to make a point, they've unveiled the plans. They haven't built it yet for a nuclear-powered container ship at various different shipping events. But more importantly at COP28. So this is important because everyone's talking about nuclear again. And we were talking about it in the last couple of years as an alternative fuel at sea, but it's coming to the forefront again. And people are understanding that this new technology, the molten salt reactor, is actually going to be potentially a lot safer, a lot cheaper, and a lot more, realistic to be used on ships. In fact, they've dropped the word nuclear in the latest press. They're just calling molten salt reactors now. It's a good bit of PR just to keep the nuclear bit out of it. So going forward, we're going to see some definite movement on nuclear powered ships and nuclear power ashore. So hopefully you've understand the major shipping events of 2023 in a half an hour. No, not really, but we've tried our best. You'll be able to explain the challenges that face shipping, and you'll be able to talk about the outlook for 2024 as much as you can, and you'll be able to explain some of the risks that underwriters face, and there are risks. We always face them. So with that, I'm going to hand you over to Tom. He's going to give you the latest casualty reports.
Thanks, Apple. Very insightful, I thought. So the purpose of this section of this briefing is to simply show you some of the recent higher cost cases that ABL have been involved in. This will hopefully show you and remind you of the sort of incidents and casualties that can happen in shipping and marine operations. But first, just a reminder of what these so-called case reports are. They feature largely, but not exclusively, the higher cost hull and machinery casualties with the estimated cost of repair in excess of $250,000, usually excluding salvage costs. They cover only a subset of the total ABL group caseload, usually between 10 and 20% of the ABL case numbers. These case reports, nevertheless, are a subset of our H&M work, for although they only cover about 20 to 25% of the H&M cases we survey by number, they cover about 65 to 75% of the H&M cases we survey by cost. Be aware that the estimated costs are often preliminary and subject to further inspections and or investigations. By presenting these case reports for the last month of activity, it's not about attributing blame. We just aim to convey what happened. So we won't be able to give any definitive conclusions about the cause, as many of the cases are still fresh and it would not be appropriate to do so. First, we're going to go through some statistics. I've been notified of 14 high-cost cases during December, and the blue columns in this chart shows the proportional distribution of those 14 casualties by casualty type. We have 7 machinery cases, 1 engine room fire, 4 collisions, 1 heavy weather case, and 1 loss of equipment on a cable layer. As always, with such a small sample set, you are bound to have a few gaps in the distribution when you compare it to the whole year. In this case, for the whole of 2022, which is given in the grey columns, this month, we seem to have more gaps and less of a spread of the casualty types. Here we've added the distribution of the same 14 cases by their total costs. As you can see, the engine room fire and the cable layer equipment costs have caused mini spikes in the profile this month. The total estimated repair cost for the 14 cases is about 13 million, which puts the average cost of December at about $900,000, just below the typical annual average background figure of $1 million. This is the figure that we keep telling you that we've seen over very many years as a face value term for these higher cost cases when individual extreme losses of over 50 million are excluded. Now, with these December losses, we've come to the end of 2023. So the cumulative charts should give us the profiles for the 2023 totals. However, you'll see that these charts have been labeled as provisional totals. This may be because my colleague who has collated the figures believes there may be some high cost cases that we missed out each month, either because they were too sensitive at the time, or perhaps because the earlier cost estimates were below the $250,000 threshold. We'll be striving to collect any missing data during the next few weeks and finalize the cumulative totals for 2023. And here is the provisional distribution of the total costs in 2023 in red. We see the spikes in some categories where we might expect them, although not all. A spike in fire explosions, for example, is quite usual as they are often more significant by cost than by number. You might expect the same for sinkings and capsizing, but as you can see, no spike. This is because the sinkings we saw in 2023 only involve smaller, lower valued vessels. And then you can see that the average costs, actual casualty costs for the year presently stands at $965,000, very close to the historical value for these higher cost cases. Let's have a look at, I think we've got 4 cases to look at this time, if we have time. Okay. First, we have a 20-year-old cable laying ship who lost her plow during cable lay operations. It's a strange looking vessel with the back end dominated by those big thick sheaves which guide the cables being laid over the stern of the ship, plus a tow line for the plow. This is something that I usually work on my day-to-day, is looking at how do you do these sort of operations. So they lost the plow, but what is a plow and how does it work? Well, as the name suggests, it's a device that creates a narrow furrow or trench in the seabed wherever it is necessary to bury a cable, in fishing areas or places where you're expecting maybe anchors to come in, you want to bury it. So it does more than that. It also guides the payload cable into the trench at the same time. So that's that big green line that goes from the left-hand side, and then it goes down the back of that big grey thing that goes underneath the ground, and then back that there. From the ploughing action, the plough is pulled along the seabed by a towing wire at the back of the ship, which is that black line, and the plough is monitored and controlled through an umbilical connection to the ship, which is the yellow line. The plough engineer on board the ship can adjust the depth of burial, for example, by up to about 3 to 5 meters by controlling the relative height of the pads that slide over the seabed. CCTV images and various sensor data are also fed back to the ship. The cable layer has an ROV that can be deployed to monitor the situation on the seabed and interact with the plough. It's quite a sophisticated setup. So this is one that's being tested so they can see what happens when it's not at the bottom of the sea. So what went wrong? So the tow line broke during ploughing for some reason that is still under investigation. Unfortunately, the tow line also serves as the lifting line that lowers the plough from the seabed and recovers it at the end of the operation, which meant they had no way of recovering it. Here we see the tow cable drum on the left. Rather than being connected directly to the plough, the tow wire is fed through a traction tension winch on the right, which should limit the tension on the tow line to safe limits well below the breaking load of the tow wire. If you think about it, the ship here will have a relatively massive towing capacity, well over what is needed to dragging a relatively small plough through the seabed, and way above the breaking load of this tow wire. So obviously, a tension limiting winch system is essential. It seems that something wasn't working properly during that operation. Anyway, here's the drum for the umbilical for the plough. After the tow line broke, the plough was still connected to the umbilical and the payload cable. The ship's ROV cut the umbilical at the plough end, and the ship retrieved the payload cable as far as possible to the ship, cut it and terminating it, and returned it to the seabed for future continuation of the project once the plough could be recovered. And this is the tow line that was also recovered. And then this is the plow operating station. So you can see all the different screens of data that they have to understand what's going on at the seabed. And here is the crew repairing the umbilical cable. They are not, they're good with electronic cables, not so good or set up with fixing tow lines. There's a couple millions worth of loss involved in this casualty, the bulk of which are contracted out recovery costs to find and raise the plow and get it back to the mothership. As you can see in this picture, the ship and the plow are happily reunited. And then this image shows the tow lines with the red and green connection points at the front of the plow. You can see how it's a bit of a mess. Our next case is a 19-year-old general cargo ship that allegedly got caught in a heavy sea plus swell conditions in the Atlantic, with waves reported up to 5.5 meters in height. These are not the worst conditions you can get, but this is a relatively small vessel, and it is claimed that at one point during the night, she heeled over sharply to 30 degrees to port and then to starboard. I understand at that point, the ship's gantry crane came off its rails and got damaged, whilst the tween deck pontoon, one of the several secured on the hatch covers, broke its securings and was lost over the side. The ship's gantry crane is just for lifting the hatch covers and the tween deck pontoons, not for general cargo operations, which are carried out by the ship's two jib cranes. Before we leave this picture, please note the normal height of the gantry crane above the hatch cover. You can see it there. And you can see after the incident that the crane has fallen or collapsed downwards onto the hatch covers. Studying the various photos, it looks like the crane may have come off its track on the port side, on the right, where the legs are stronger, which overloaded and bent, displaying the weaker sections of the legs on the port side. In fact, if you look at this photo closely, you can see that the tween deck pontoon underneath the crane is not sitting square on its hatch covers. It looks like it is shifted to port, which is the right. I wonder if this pushed the crane off its tracks. From this drawing of the crane, note the stronger section, chunkier with the chunkier legs on the right-hand side of the picture, providing the bulk of the strength on the frame structure. You can see. So it's more of a structure on the right, and there's only basically 2 columns on the left. Back to the photos, see the chunkier legs on this side, and note the position of the track and the shifted tween deck pontoon. Indeed, it does look like the pontoon shifted and pushed the crane on its track on this side. This caused the failure of the weaker section legs on the starboard side at the top of the portal. And here's another view of the broken and splayed legs on the starboard side, looking forward. I wonder how those broken railings occurred, where the other tween deck pontoon went over the side, although they also lost an 8-meter aluminium gangway too. All 4 wheel units have been broken and they're strapped back up there. And the lifting machinery on the gantry crane has been broken as well. In fact, it looks like the whole main platform for the gantry has deformed. Has a nice bend in it. And of course, the spreader has been crushed below the main platform. Muddying the water a bit, our survey noted that the crane was in a pretty corroded state in many areas, including the way of the failed sections of the starboard legs. To what extent that played a part may be being discussed. So $500,000 of loss here for the replacement of the whole crane, replacement of the lost pontoon and gangway, plus renewable of the starboard side railings. For our third case, we have this 12-year-old Handymax bulk carrier that was setting out on a laden voyage from the Middle East to a Mediterranean port when she got run into by a similarly sized bulk carrier in the port approach channel. Both ships were traveling in the same direction, with the other vessel about 2 cables, about 370 meters behind, and a few ships length starboard. Both ships were traveling about 10.5 knots. About 1:20 in the morning, when our ship here was suddenly started turning to starboard without any helm being applied on the bridge. Probably not a comfortable experience for the second officer who was on watch. The vessel had been on autopilot, so he switched to manual control and turned the helm hard to port, but with no response. With the ship turning, it would have slowed down and the other ship would have started to catch up. The second officer tried to contact the other ship on VHF, but they did not respond. He switched to steering pump 2, but I suspect he knew it wouldn't work. Disturbingly, it had already failed 2 hours earlier. He called the master, but within 2 minutes of him arriving on the bridge, the vessel was struck by the other ship. Both ships stopped and exchanged information, after which the bulker resumed her voyage. The subject ship here managed to get sufficient steering control restored and proceed to a suitable anchorage for inspections, which is where we see her now. Let's have a look at the damage. There appear to be 2 contacts from the other ship, one obvious here on the way of her accommodation aft block, and another less obvious forward in the way of number 1 hold. On the other vessel, there are also 2 positions of obvious damage. The first here is the forward port shoulder, and the other is here aft on the ship's side, just forward of the accommodation block. With the other ship riding higher in the waves and water, the damage at the aft extremes aft extends upwards to the boat deck of the subject vessel. It is not so obvious from this angle, but from this one, where the deformation of the boat deck support pillars can definitely be seen. It's still better here from the main deck. Note the crushing of the edge deck of the main deck. The deck plating and the frames below are probably permanently distorted inboard by a couple of meters and will need to be cropped out. Similarly, on the boat deck above. So relatively expensive casualty at $700,000, most of which is for the 40 tons of steel renewals required. I understand that the steering gear repairs, by comparison, only amounts to 15K. Overall, disappointing for all those concerned, I expect. The owners had brought the ship in April 2023 and had already experienced problems with the steering gear in July 2023. At that time, they had elected to carry out a major overhaul of the steering gear and both hydraulic pumps, which was carried out in September. All might would have expected the steering gear to have behaved a bit better for a bit longer than it did. Finally, this month, we have 3 cases, and one from last month involving sister vessel crew boats that were built in the Far East and delivered to their owners in 2023. All 4 of them, alas, have had problems with their parallel hybrid propulsion systems. The setup is similar to the concept for the full and plug-in parallel hybrid systems that we see in cars, where an internal combustion engine and an electric motor can drive the drive shafts together or separately, and with proper control, this can lead to a greater over fuel efficiencies and lower emissions, mainly by using the electric motor at low speeds where the internal combustion engine is less efficient. On the bridge, the helmsman gets a nice human-machine interface like you get in hybrid cars to show how the power is being routed. In our crew boats, a diesel engine and electric motor both feed into the parallel hybrid transmission, or PHD, unit that sits between the diesel engine and the electric motor. The output shaft from the PHD feeds into a reduction gearbox at the forward end of this arrangement, which in turn outputs to the propeller shaft, which leads aft. Back in August, the master of one of the 4 vessels first reported a malfunction on the portside system. Smoke filled the engine room and there was a lack of power on the port side. Manufacturers of the PHT unit got involved and concluded that the diesel engine was too powerful for the rating of the PHT unit. Exactly how a design error like that could have happened is still under investigation, but the solution has to replace the installed PHDs with higher rated units. Unfortunately, it's not a simple setup, and it's not a straight swap, as the size of the units are different, requiring mountings to be adapted. The large units also work on a different voltage, so switchboards and cabling also had to be changed. At $250,000 apiece, a quite sizable loss for each vessel, considering their size. And of course, even more significant when there are 4 of them to sort out. That's all we've got for this month. I hope you found the cases interesting. I'll now hand back to Mark.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Paul, for your presentation earlier. We have a winner from last month's prize draw. Only one person answered correctly. I don't know if he's in the room. He is registered. It's Anthony Gardner. Is he around? Is he here? No, he's not. Well, we'll get the bottle of champagne to him. So if you'd like to take part for next month, please take a look at your inboxes and we'll follow up with an email with a question in it. Just another brief reminder to help us improve, if you wouldn't mind, the QR code there for our feedback. We haven't got time any questions, which is a shame because I wanted to quiz Paul on his flat Earth beliefs, but we're not gonna be able to do that today. I'm gonna have to take that up with him later in the pub, perhaps. Thank you all again. The next briefing will be on the 15th of February, back here in the old Lloyd's Library, and you'll be able to join us online as well, of course, if you want to. And until then, take care, and we'll see you next month.